The Zygon Invasion and the Zygon Inversion. This one is smack in the middle of Capaldi's second series as the Doctor, and it really stands as one of the great episodes, I think, from Series 9. I really thoroughly enjoyed this one. If you don't want any spoilers for the story, be sure to dip out now because I'm definitely going to have some spoilers. With that said, let's continue. I really like what's done with the Zygons in this one because it very much feels different to what we've gotten in the past, say in Terror of the Zygons. We get some really creepy stuff in here. And I like the dynamic of all of these Zygons throughout the world, and the scale of this episode does feel a bit larger than an ordinary episode of Doctor Who, and for this particular story, I think that works. Not only do I like what's done with the Zygons in terms of the creepy stuff like we get in the second story, where there's this guy who's being forced to turn into a Zygon. It's this really messed up scene, and I just thought stuff like that was absolutely fantastic, where we just get to see different kinds of things in these unique situations where this person is being forced to turn into a Zygon, where ordinarily we wouldn't get that kind of stuff. And they do change the rules of the Zygons a little bit in this story, because now they don't need the host alive to maintain the body. And they do play with the rules a little bit. And I know that might upset some people, but for me that really worked because it just allowed them to do these different things, like with Osgood. Because one of the Osgoods died, we don't know which one that was, and they play with that in the story, which they wouldn't really be able to do if it was following the exact same rules. One of the things that doesn't work so well is the Zygons just kind of have this ability to zap people, and it's a bit generic. It doesn't really ruin the story, but it's the one thing about them that's changed that for me, I'm like, yeah, that wasn't necessary. And talking about Osgood a little bit, I really do enjoy this character. She's just very likable and kind of relatable and just really enjoyable to watch. And it really helps that she has such a good dynamic with Peter Capaldi, especially in the second half of the story, where they get to spend a little bit more time with each other. And there's this really interesting thing going on with that character that very much fits into the narrative of this story of all these Zygons across the planet that are hidden as humans, which I think is really cool. I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, but at the very end of the story, then the Doctor asks her whether or not she is the human Osgood or the Zygon Osgood, and she says that she'll answer that question when nobody cares what the answer to that question is. And it's a very simple and effective way to just kind of say what's going on. When nobody cares whether or not she is human or Zygon, then she'll be fine with people knowing that. But right now, it's a thing that matters, and it shouldn't be. And that gave Osgood something more to do than just being the sort of fan service character that, she's wearing the Doctor's scarf, she's got the question marks, she knows a lot about the Doctor because she is a fan thrown into the show, and this enabled her to have a little bit more than that because she was tied into this story. Talking about Kate and Unit for a little bit, I'm not the biggest fan. I mean, Unit, they're okay, and I feel like it makes sense to have Kate and Unit in the story because, first of all, you kind of need Osgood in this one for it to work. They were a big part of what was set up in the Day of the Doctor, so it naturally makes sense for them to be here. But Unit, for me, is mostly kind of bland. We do get some interesting stuff, which I'll touch on in just a second, but they're just kind of there. They're not really my favorite. And Kate, I think she's perfectly fine. She's not a particularly interesting character to me. She never really has been. She's just kind of filling in the shoes of the Brigadier. I know some people really like her, some people really don't. But for me, yeah, she's fine. So touching back on Unit, there's this very interesting scene where there's all these soldiers standing outside of this building where we know that there are Zygons. And one of them comes out and it's disguised as this person's mother, this soldier's mother. And that is one of the ways that they change the rules of the story. This is not something that you could get away with in Terror of the Zygons because that's not the rules they were playing with. But as was established in this story, the rules have changed. And that enables them to do really interesting stuff like this, which I think is just so messed up and fantastic. It's a really interesting kind of exploration into whether or not this soldier actually could kill this person that looked exactly like his mother. And of course, they all die. I just love it because it's so dark and it's just doing things that totally work and are very fitting in this story. I want to talk about Jenna Coleman for a bit because I think Jenna Coleman is absolutely fantastic in this story. We get this reveal that this person is not the actual Clara. This is a Zygon. When I first watched this one, I was definitely surprised by it. And on subsequent rewatches, I watch it and I go, how did that surprise me? It feels like it's obvious. I don't really know how obvious it was because I watched it when I was younger. So if I watched it now, I don't know if I would have seen it coming. But I do know that it still plays really well regardless of if it's predictable. It's a fun, engaging scene to watch as they figure out that, oh no, this is Zygon Clara. And just seeing Bonnie at the end of the story, everything she does where she tries to murder the Doctor, it's so much fun to watch Jenna Coleman play a different character, and I just absolutely adored that. And then when we get into the second half, we get more of Jenna Coleman as Clara and as Bonnie. And this is great fun because we get to see those two interact. Jenna Coleman is performing off of, no one, because she's not really performing off of herself. And she's doing a great job. I love the opening of this episode where we see her kind of discovering what's going on. It's a ton of fun to watch. So I love Jenna Coleman in the story. I thought she was great as Clara and equally great as Bonnie. I need to talk about Peter Capaldi as the Doctor for a second. Now, setting aside the actual ending of this story with the speech and everything, he's really good. I really, really enjoy him as the Doctor. He's one of my favorites, and it's so much fun to watch him in here, and I just really enjoy Capaldi throughout all of Series 9 and throughout all of his era, but in this story as well. And I also need to say that outside of the big speech scene at the end of the story, this is a great story. It's a great story, and the end, it makes it even better. I think that ending is absolutely fantastic. I love the whole speech. It's so engaging because you get to that point in the story where they're all down there in, I think it's called the Black Archive, and they're kind of having this conversation. And oh my god, the dialogue is so good and it's performed so well. And it's this really interesting thing that doesn't always happen to me where you're just watching an episode and then time just instantly flies by. And it was so entertaining to watch. I was so engaged in what was going on, more so than even the rest of the episode, that entire sequence, I don't even know how long it was. It might have been 20 minutes. It might have been 8 minutes. I don't know, because it completely flew by. And I thought that was really a testament to not just the writing, but the actors, primarily Peter Capaldi, as he is the one monologuing for the majority of this. But it is also, to an extent, a conversation with Bonnie and also with Kate. And then it kind of leads into more of a monologue, which is so good and so powerful. And Peter Capaldi absolutely nails it. I know many people call this his defining moment as the Doctor, and I understand why people do, because it's incredible. I don't know if I would agree with that. I would really have to think about his entire era, but I know that he's absolutely fantastic in this scene and in this entire story. And this scene really just ties the episode together. And I love just the message, the Doctor being completely anti-war, because of course he is, as I am. Yeah, that's absolutely fantastic. And if I have one criticism with this story, because I do, it's that we figure out at the end of this that this is not the first time that the Doctor has delivered this speech. As great of a speech as it is, it's just kind of takes away from it because it's not off the cusp. He's done this before. And I think thinking about the actual story, it does make sense that he wipes Kate's memory, but he doesn't wipe the Zygons' memory. I think it makes sense. I'm not entirely sure. But it just takes away from it a little bit for me. Not completely by any means, but it definitely isn't quite as special knowing that, yeah, he's done this before and he's going to do it again. Overall, I thought this was a really solid story. I thoroughly enjoyed everything that was going on with the Zygons, and I enjoyed how they played the rules to allow them to do different and interesting things. I thought that Osgood was good, and I really enjoyed her element within the story. I thought that Clara and Bonnie were great. Jenna Coleman does a fantastic job. Peter Capaldi is excellent. I really liked what this was going for, these different dark elements that it was able to play around with in a really engaging and interesting way that kept me thoroughly entertained for about 90 minutes. This is, I think, a great story, and I'm going to give the Zygon Invasion and the Zygon Inversion a rating of 9 out of 10. So yeah, those are my thoughts on this story. I don't really have much more to say. I hope you join me again soon for another one of these rewatches. I don't know which one it will be, but probably in a couple of weeks from now, whenever I find more time, then I'll watch another one of these stories and I'll talk about it. I would also be quite interested to hear what people have to say about the story, because I know that it is a bit of a divisive one. I don't know what you think, but I'd be happy to hear down below. And I will definitely be joining you again this Sunday with a review of The Wheel in Space, followed by a review of Season 5 as a whole. So I hope to see you around for some of those, but if not, that's totally cool. Just know that I appreciate your time here today. And with that said, thank you very much for watching. Take care and have a lovely week.